Welcome to the Management Advantage. Y'all, on today's show, we're going to take a look at a little different aspect of wildlife management, and that's managing wildlife in your backyard. My wife and I bought our first house last June, and despite my begging, she insisted on getting one in a subdivision. So when it came time for me to plant and landscape the backyard, I decided to do it with wildlife-friendly varieties. So you guys, I may be creating a pretty good honeydew list after y'all watch this show today, but trust me, it can be fun. It's something your whole family can enjoy, and you'd be surprised at the wildlife that's going to come into these suburban areas. So right after this break, we're going to come back and show you some wildlife-friendly varieties of trees and shrubs that you can landscape your backyard with. We'll see you in a second. I think this will work just a little bit better. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It was impossible to start these holes with just a manual set of diggers. I imagine that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, this was probably an old field, so you got a pretty good hard pan from years of agriculture. Then they came in and set these pines out before the developers got a hold to it and put it into a subdivision. So the back use of this land yields it to having a pretty significant hard pan. And I mean, I wasn't digging down 3 inches before I hit that hard pan. And y'all all know the key to getting a food plot established, or in our case today, shrubbery, you got to have a place for those roots to go. We could have dug a 6-inch hole, stuck those plants in it, and they would have been fine for a little while till those roots hit that hard pan. Then they would have died. So what we did, we dug down further than we needed to. We're going to take all the dirt out, put our plants in, check the depth, and then fill in so those plants have got some good, fresh, soft dirt for the roots to go into, and then we'll be in pretty good shape. Y'all, the first planting we're going to take a look at today is a Japanese persimmon. Most of y'all are familiar with the common persimmon. It's got the pretty little succulent orange fruit. They're about the size of a golf ball. Well, this Japanese persimmon is going to have fruit that's going to be the size of a baseball, so it produces a ton of quality wildlife food. You know, one thing you want to do, you want to make sure that you loosen up those roots. If they've been in that pot for a while, you want them to know that they're out and that they can go on out below that pot. Y'all, one thing that's critical, you got to make sure that this tree is reaching the bottom of your hole. Because if you get air pocket in there, it's going to starve to death. All right, now finally, we've got our hole wide enough, we've got our hole deep enough. Y'all see this part of the tree right here? You can see that there's 2 distinct parts, here and here. This is a graft point on that tree. When you plant it, if you cover that graft up, your tree is not going to make it. So what we want to do is we're going to bring in this dirt to about 1 inch below that graft. And we're going to pile the dirt around it, keep packing it down where we've got those roots touching good soil all the way around it. Now, where you're going to have dirt left over, that's okay, because we're going to hook the sprinklers up, we're going to water it, and as it's watered, this dirt's going to settle, so you're going to have to continually keep piling this dirt up to about 1 inch or so below that graft, and eventually you'll settle in, you'll have your tree started off in good manner. Y'all, the next 2 that we're going to plant is we've got a strawberry bush, which is Euonymus Americana. It is in the south one of the indicator plants. When you buy a piece of property, if you go out and you have strawberry bush on your place, you don't have a real high deer density. This is one of the most highly preferred plant species that we have down here. And it's one of the first things that goes when your deer numbers get too high. Like I said, it is extremely preferred. What we're going to do is we're going to stick these two little 1 gallon strawberry bushes in the same hole, and you can see how those roots have been in that pot so long that they're growing in a circle. Well, you want to break them from that. You just run your finger down through there just to break them up enough where they know that they're out of that pot. We're going to fill in because, again, our hole is too deep and too wide, but we wanted to make sure that we got these little plants a good bed in here. So we're going to firm up the bottom of it. See, y'all, that's still a little bit too deep. You don't need to have your dirt right there. But we've got this good loose soil right here, so these roots can go down and get a good hold. We're just going to put a little bit more in there. We want it loose now, but we don't want it too loose. So we're going to firm it just a little bit more, and we'll be good to go with these. That'll work right there. We're going to sit both of these strawberry bushes side by side. Now we're in mid-August right now. And in the south, this is really not the most preferred times to plant. But since we are talking about backyard management, we've got access to either a sprinkler system or a water hose, so we can keep these plants watered during this crucial time. Our third wildlife plant that we're going to put in the backyard is the American Beautyberry, Cali Carp Americana. It's got pretty little purple berries right here. Deer browse on the leaves, and songbirds go nuts over these little berries. So it is an outstanding wildlife plant, but it also looks nice in your yard with those little berries in it. So we're going to plant 2 of these together next to our strawberry bush and our Japanese persimmon. We're all using these 3 plant species: Japanese persimmon, the American Beautyberry, and the strawberry bush. You can use wildlife friendly plant and shrub species that are also aesthetically pleasing for your backyard, where your wife and your neighbors won't get mad at you when you get through. Y'all, the final plant that we're going to look at today putting in the yard is a blackberry. And most of y'all are thinking, why in the world would you plant a blackberry in your backyard, realize wildlife eat it, but it's got thorns everywhere? Well, guess what? They have thornless varieties of blackberries, and these have huge fruit on them. So not only is it going to have pretty white flowers for us in the spring, it's going to produce a ton of succulent fruit that, if you can get out here and beat the deer and the songbirds to it, you could probably make a pretty good blackberry cobbler. Well, y'all, this stage of the backyard management is complete. Got the plants in the ground. Now we just got to get the water set up on them, give them a nice drink this afternoon, and keep a check on to make sure they got plenty of water so they can get a good root system established. Now, just like a food plot on your hunting property, our backyard food plot required the same steps to make it successful. First thing we did was we took a soil sample. Secondly, we GPSed the plot to know our exact acreage for the amount of lime, fertilizer, and seed we needed. Now, practices on this property for the past 20 or so years had created a severe hard pan. So we got in a small tractor with a box blade turn the tines down so we could break that hard pan. Now we disc it 2 different ways where we could get a good seed bed prepared. After that was ready, we went in and we applied our lime. Then we applied our fertilizer. We disced the area again and smoothed it out good. Once that was planted, we hooked the sprinkler system up and let Mother Nature take its course. Y'all, even though this food plot is in the backyard and not in the woods, you still have to treat it the same way. So the first thing we wanted to do was come in and knock the top out of this grass. Well, when Bo came to cut the yard, the deck on his mower will only raise up to 4 inches, so we made 1 pass down it to check, and that's just cutting our clover entirely too low to the ground. So he got his weed eater and he came back in, and all he did was just cut the top out of that grass where the sunlight can hit directly on that clover. And what it'll do, it'll let that clover establish itself more, and hopefully by knocking the top out of that grass, we will be able to establish a perennial clover plot here in the backyard. We've already got deer coming to it, rabbits, gray foxes, just numerous bird species. So the food plot is producing forage for the neighborhood wildlife. The wildflowers are coming up, so it's going to be a nice addition to the landscaping in the backyard. Now, y'all, rather than throwing away the limbs once they fall in the yard, we created 2 small brush piles. And what this does, this provides great escape cover and hiding cover for quail, rabbits, rats, other small mammals that may live in your backyard. And one of the easiest things we did to improve the habitat in our backyard was we placed a bluebird box. We put up a woodpecker feeding cube, a hummingbird feeder, and 2 songbird feeders. Now we placed these feeders where my wife and I could enjoy them from the kitchen, but more importantly, where the dog and the cat could watch the birds. So take into consideration all the members of your family when you're laying out your backyard wildlife habitat. Y'all, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use a plant growth hormone called Grow2 to add to our shrubbery. Now what Grow2 does, it increases the root growth of anything green, whether it's a food plot, native vegetation like honeysuckle or greenbrier, or our blackberries and our beautyberry bushes. Once you apply lime, get your pH right, then add fertilizer, it gets a conducive condition there for that plant to grow. Well, but it can only uptake so much. So by applying Grow2 to increase the root growth, you're having more roots underground that can take up more nutrients. It's going to transfer it into the foliage, so you're going to have more foliage, more fruit, and it actually increases the palatability, so it tastes better. So whether you're managing a food plot, native vegetation, or plants in your backyard, or even your lawn, by applying that plant hormone to it, it's going to make it a hardier, more vigorous plant that can withstand drought better and grazing pressure better. Whether you've got 5,000 acres or just a half-acre lot in a subdivision, you can still practice wildlife management. So you can use the tips that we showed you today to help improve the quality of the wildlife habitat in your neighborhood.